Assalamu alaikum. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Mukhtar Ahmad with the Virtual University course of Leadership and Team Management. We are here with our lecture number 9. We started this concept of leadership and tried to understand the basic elements of the leadership process. And those basic elements were: number 1, leader; number 2, followers; and number 3, situation. Then during our previous lectures, we started to understand each component, each element. Who is a leader? What are the characteristics of a good leader? Are the leaders always good or effective or ethical? Are there be any bad leaders too? Then we try to understand basic characteristics, personality, and other traits of few, of course not all traits of, few traits of a good leader. And then we shifted to followers. And we focused on this follower concept in our last 2 lectures. What followers are, what can make a follower a good follower. We also discussed few different types of followers we can have in different organizations, different groups, in different teams. And then we try to understand the role of situation. How a situation can have a different effect on the same type of followers and same type of leaders. And then we try to overlap all 3 different elements and try to understand how this process of leadership is taking place. While defining the leadership process, we said this is not a position, but it is a process. And nowadays, more and more organizations, they are shifting from a management to a leadership process phenomena. Then we also try to understand the difference between a leader and a manager, or the leadership and management. And then we figure out that both things are important, a leadership and management too, to accomplish the goals, to achieve the goals. And we also try to understand the importance of leader and same time the followers. For the achievement of followers, they depend on the leaders. At the same time, for the achievement, leader also depend on the followers. So a good winning team is always a team which have good cohesive followers and leader relationship, a trust on each other, and working like a team. That is why we are more shifting from management to leadership. And then during last lecture, at the end, we try to understand, we try to pick few things from the history. How this leadership process was evaluated. And we started with the different eras. We divided the whole 19th century into 3 to 4 different eras. It was also discussed that before 19th century, this leadership, a leader was only meant for the army or the royal families. But later on, in different eras, different kind of activities, different kind of event happen. So that has shifted more toward the leadership process things. Today, in lecture number 9, I'll try to discuss with you the theoretical aspect of leadership. The approaches of leaderships, different theories which people have worked out to understand this leadership process in a better way. So let's start our lecture number 9, which will be mainly focusing on the approaches or theories of the leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are a management student, you must have studied different basic theories like theory of X, theory of Y, Maslow's hierarchy of need, and also the Hawthorne studies. These were the few theories, few research work, few activities in the previous decade, so many decades, which shifted this mechanic approach toward humanistic approach. People started realizing the importance of human being, and also then again with the passage of time, when they figure out that this is the important input, this is the important source, they started to identify a few different type of people, human being working in the organization. And then they started differentiating them from leaders to followers, that what are the characteristics which a leader can have. Similarly, what are the followers? Based on this, educationists, researchers have been trying to answer the following questions. What were the questions? What does it take to be a successful leader? And what is the most effective leadership style? So they started asking themselves, how can we see that? Or how can we say this? This person A has a leadership qualities. There must be some indicators. There must be some characteristics. There must be some obvious indicators which can indicate for us that that person has some qualities of a leadership. And then, not only leader, but the effective leader. Again, going back to theory X and theory Y. If you remember, what was theory X? Theory X says the belief was that the people are basically lazy. They need continued reinforcement if you want to get something done from them. And theory Y, that holds that if you have right condition, people are willing to work. They are not lazy. They need right type of conditions, and people will work them. So there were two different type of approaches or theories. We call them theory X and theory Y, right? So when they started studying this leadership part of the behavior, so in early time, in beginning, they started with two different approaches, two different theories of leadership. Number one was trait theory or trait approach, and the number two was the behavior part or behavior approach. But later on, with the passage of time, there was two different approaches again. So number one was the previous one, the trait approach or trait theory of leadership. The second was the behavior approach or theory of the leadership. The third one was the contingency approach, or we can say the contingency theory. And the fourth one, nowadays people talk about new theories. So let me go one by one and try to understand to you what are those different theories, different approaches which are helping us to understand this leadership process. So let's start with the trait approach or trait theory. This is the oldest one, the earliest one, which believe that leaders are born, not made. And leaders possesses certain characteristics, certain traits, which can make them leaders. So that was the original theory, that was the original approach, which was based on certain studies, certain finding of certain peoples. So as I said, trait theory means that people are born with certain characteristics. Let me show you two examples here. See, on this slide, you can see two very big prominent leaders of the world. Number one, of course, our leader, the Qaeda-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, and the second one, the Nelson Mandela. People believe that these type of people are born with certain characteristics, with certain traits. That is why they believe that leaders are born, not made. These theories, trait theories, they try to isolate those characteristics or identify those characteristics based on which you can differentiate leader from non-leaders. What were those characteristics? I'll try to explain to you in next few slides. So basically, they have also tried to prove that if people are with those specific traits, if they're born with those characteristics, and if they can show those traits in their real life, that they can also be seen that people having those characteristics and those characteristics having more consistency in their behavior, and that was directly related with the success of that particular leader. Meaning that if a person was born with certain characteristics, which based on their research or based on their whatever findings, they identify that these are the basic traits, these are the basic characteristics leader is having more than the followers, then if a person has those traits, the probability is if they can behave or they can show those characteristics in real life, they can be successful leaders. Why people were concerned about these traits? Of course, number one, they can differentiate based on those traits or characteristics among leaders and followers. And at the same time, that was helping them to pick the right type of people at the leadership position for the leadership process, or pick the right type of leaders for their organization. Sir Francis in 1869 wrote a kind of a book based on, he was one of the earliest leadership theorists, Heredity Genius, that was published in 1869. They believe that leadership qualities are genetical. What does it mean? That, as I said earlier, that this trait approach, that is indicating that people are born leaders. Our leaders are by birth. And this genetic makeup which they have, they are helping to be a good leader. एक अच्छे लीडर का आगे जो पैदा होगा, ऑफस्प्रिंग बच्चे होंगे, they are also coming with the same genetical makeup that is making them a good leader. तो ये जो किताब लिखी उन्होंने 1869 में, आई बिलीव, that Heredity Genius, उसका जो मेन फोकस उसी बेस पे ये ट्रेट थ्योरी जो है वो, जिसको आगे चल के फिर लोगों ने बाकी रिसर्च भी किया. And the logic was that these are characteristics which are already present in their genetical makeup. Later, of course, there were different approaches which are negating this trait approach, but that was the original belief or the basic belief about the leadership, to understand the leaders or leadership process. That basically this theory assumes that there are some physical and psychological characteristics which matter a lot while defining the effective leadership process. They indicated the basic intelligence part, the clear and strong value systems, and high personal energy in beginning. Later on, more and more traits were identified and pointed out these are the traits which are very essential for an effective leaders. Then again, as I said, initially there were 3. Then Edwin, he identified 6 traits, 6 characteristics which can make an effective leader. And they were need for achievement, number 2, intelligence, number 3, decisiveness, number 4, self-confidence, number 5, initiative, and number 6, supervisory ability. So Edwin has identified 3 traits, characteristics for a good leader. So basically this approach, this theory of trait approach is basically putting emphasis that people with special qualities, people with special traits are responsible, are the people who should be leader or who are the leader and who have this leadership capacity, or who can be good leaders. There was another similar part of kind of same type of theory. Sometimes they call it great man theory, basically. Trait and great man theory, basically. These are almost same thing, focusing on the same trait approach or trait theories. Similarly, a lot of people have tried to add more traits, more characteristics, which can be known as part of the characteristics or trait of a good leader. Let me share with you a few more, which we have already during so many discussion we have discussed those things, but quickly related to all this theory part or approach part, let me quickly go through them. Let's start with the personal characteristics. A person have the energy. He has the physical stamina, or she has the physical stamina. If a person has more energy, more stamina, the probability is with these traits, with these characteristics, he or she is going to be a leader. Similarly, intelligence and abilities. Intelligence, cognitive abilities, knowledge, judgment, decisiveness, these type of characteristics are also good indicators which can help you to separate leaders from the followers. That was the belief of the people who are pursuing, who are kind of explaining or doing the research on trait theories. Then about the personality part. Similarly, in personality part, the same thing which we already covered: self-confidence, honesty, enthusiasm, desire to lead, independence. These were the characteristics, these were the few indicators of a personality of a person which can lead you, which can direct you to pick him or her as a leader. Then there was certain social characteristics which were identified based on the research, based on their findings, that these are the traits, these are the characteristics which a leader can have. Those social characteristics were sociability, interpersonal skills, cooperativeness, tactics, diplomacy. These are the things. If a person is tactful, if he knows how to do the diplomacy, again, it is in a positive sense, of course. And same time, interpersonal skill, communication skills with each other, pursuing or kind of communicating what he or she want. So these were the characteristics when they figure out are essential, are important to be a leader. Then what about the work-related characteristics? Drive, to excel, to achieve something, responsibility, to take the responsibility and pursue toward the achievement of the goals. Persistence, again, obstacles, and cohesiveness in the team. These were the few characteristics, word characteristics, which they identified are the traits, are the characteristics which are required for a leader. Similarly, social backgrounds, their education, their status, these were also few indicators, few characteristics, few traits which researchers figure out are essential to become a good leader. So ladies and gentlemen, what I'm trying to do here is trying to explain to you what are different approaches, what are different theories based on which this leadership process can be understood in a better way. I started with the old one, the initial theory or approach that was trait theory, and as I said, they have identified so many different traits which are very essential according to them to become a good leader. I can show you this slide here again. Few traits are indicated here like intelligence, dominance, self-confidence, high energy level, and task relevant knowledge. These are few other very important traits which are essential to become a good leader. Few more to come, like drive. Of course, as I said, they are born as a leader, so natural traits. The drive, the self-confidence again, the honesty, the motivation, the cognitive ability, the knowledge about their business. These are again few other traits, characteristics which can make them the leader. So ladies and gentlemen, again, this was the trait theory, that people are born with certain traits, with certain characteristics which can make them the leaders. What about the behavior approach, behavior theory? So that is the second theory, second approach. the behavior approach, which are the theory, which say that there are certain behavioral parts or certain specific behaviors which a leader can have. And those behavior things, they can be learned. That people can be trained to be an effective leaders. It's not necessary that you should be born or leaders are born. Those characteristics, those behaviors, which are essential for a leader. And those behaviors can be learned with training, with experience. This theory attempts to isolate those behaviors that differentiate effective leaders from ineffective leaders. This theory focuses on differentiating those behaviors which can make a person an effective leader. Behavior study focuses on identifying critical behavior determinants of the leadership that in turn could be used to train the people in the organization. This indicates that if you understand what are those specific behaviors which are required to be an effective leaders, then it will be very easy for organization to arrange the training sessions for their leaders to become an effective or good leader. Different studies were carried out to explain this behavior theory or behavior approach. The first one, the University of Iowa study, we call it, that they try to explore different leadership styles and try to understand which one is better. They started with the autocratic, then of course democratic, and the third one was, they said, laissez-faire, mean easygoing leaders. Each leadership style has specific characteristics, specific behavior. In the autocratic leader, democratic, basically it was more toward participative, involving the followers with you. And the third one was giving the group freedom. That is why it is an easygoing, basically. They figure out that the democratic part, a democratic style, is the better one, which can give better results. So this was the first study, we call it University of Iowa study, done by Kurt Levin. And the then second study was conducted by Ohio State Universities. This study was conducted focusing on two dimensions of the leadership. Number one was initiating structure. Number two was consideration. This initiating structure, basically in this approach, what they tried to understand was that a leader is task-oriented and directs subordinates for specific actions. Similarly, the second dimension was consideration, where they figure out the leader is sensitive to the subordinates. So this Ohio State to study or theory, part of this theory of behavior science or behavior approach or behavior theory, the second study focused on two dimensions of the leadership, that number one, initiating structure, number two, consideration. In the initiating structure, they try to understand that leader is task-oriented and is basically he or she direct the subordinates. That was the behavior of the leader. And the second consideration, a dimension, it was basically that leader is sensitive to the subordinates and respects their ideas, feelings, and establish a mutual trust with their subordinates. So these were two dimensions of the focus of the Ohio State studies. Then yet there was another studies on the leadership which was conducted at the University of Michigan. They studied the leadership behavior related to workers, motivations, and group performance. And they also identified two dimensions. Number one was two dimensions of the behavior, of course. Number one, job-centered, and number two, employee-centered. Basically, this is the same, which was the focus of Ohio State. Initiating the structure, showing the consideration. This University of Michigan study identifies that employee-oriented, they emphasize interpersonal relationship. Those leaders which are the employee-centered or employee-oriented, they were more emphasizing on the interpersonal relationship. They accept individual differences among subordinates, and they associated with high group productivity. The second dimension they study was the production-oriented, or this job-centered we call it, or the other people, they kind of explain them as a production-oriented aspect of the jobs. They were more concerned about the accomplishment of the group's task, and they associated with the low group productivity and low job satisfaction. So this was the third study on the behavior approach or behavior theory, which was conducted in the, we call it University of Michigan studies basically. So under this behavior theories, there were two major studies which was conducted. Number one, Ohio State, which was focusing on initiating the structures or consideration, and the University of Michigan studies, that is employee-oriented and production-oriented. So all these studies gave a kind of people to understand the behavior aspect of the leaders. And they figure out these are the specific behavior which are required to become the leaders. And then later on, Robert Black and John Morton, they developed a managerial grid, they call it, reflecting the Ohio and Michigan studies. The ideal leader, according to them, was basically, let me show you this managerial grid, they call it. What they did basically, they plotted on two dimensions, two dimensions of the leadership. Number one was concern for the people. Are the people are employee-oriented, are employee-centered leadership, are leaders, and then the this was on y-axis, and on the x-axis, they plotted this concern of the production. And then they identify four different extremes and the middle point to understand the behavior of five different types of leaders. The first one, let's start from the bottom, where they have minimum concern of the people, of that leader, particular leader, for the production, and at the same time, he or she has the minimum concern about the people. So this type of leader, whose behavior is that they are least concerned about the production, about the task achievement, and they are least concerned about the people or the subordinates. So this is kind of a poor leadership style according to this behavior theory. Then they have another stream, a leader who has least concern about the people, but he's highest at the scale of 9 basically, because in the both x-axis and y-axis they have plotted given the 9 highest scale. So 9 level of concern about the achievement production, they gave this stage or this type of leader the authority oriented or authority obedience leader basically. Authority obedience leader basically. The person is more concerned about the production and less concerned about the people. The middle point was the people having equal concern about the production and equal concern about the people or their subordinates. And they call it organization management leadership style. Then there is yet another type of leadership according to this managerial grade. If a leader is more concerned about the people and less concerned about the production, that is a country club management, they call it, style of the leader. And the best one they figure out is the leader who is more concerned about the people at the highest level 9, and at the same time more concerned about the production or the goal achievement. They call it team management. So according to them, this type of a leader having this type of behavior is the best leader who has a team management style of the leadership. I hope you understood this managerial grid philosophy. Let me explain it to you again. What they did basically, based on Michigan and Ohio studies of the behavior, leadership behavior, they kind of plotted two-dimension things on a graph. On the y-axis, they plotted concern with the people, like concern of the subordinates, concern with the subordinates, how concerned a leader is about the welfare and kind of achievement of the subordinates. And the x-axis, they plotted concern about the production, are focusing on the goal achievements. And they started comparing the minimum and the maximum point of the both things. Started with the lowest part on the left hand side of the corner. You can see that if you have they are least concerned about the production and the least concern about the people, so those type of leaders are four type of leaders. One basically, where we have one value for the concern of the leader, the concern of the people or subordinates, and the one value for the concern for production or achievement of the goals. Second type of leaders or style of the leader they plotted was when they have more, or the leader have more concern, the 9 part, as far as the concern of the production is concerned. They are more concerned about the achievement of the goals. And they are least concerned about the people, the one for the leadership point. The 1 point for the concern of the subordinates. So they call it authority, obedience type of leaders. Then they plotted giving 5 points each, that they're equally concerned about the production and concerned with the people. But it was not the highest, they gave them the middle point level of their concern. They call it organization management. What does it mean? This type of behavior of a leader is indicating that leader is equally concerned about the people and the production, but at a middle level. Then what they did basically, they plotted this concern of the leader more toward people. Give the 9 scale the highest. But those type of leaders, if they are least concerned about the production, about the achievement of the goals, about the organization, so these type of leaders, they identify them as country club management style of the leadership. And another one where they gave them the highest value for both things. 9 scale for the concern of the people, and at 9 scale concern of the production. That this type of leadership style or leader style is basically, they call it team management style. Which one you think is better one? Of course, if a leader style, a leader behavior is in a way that he or she is always concerned about the welfare or the achievements of the subordinates, and same time they have highest level of concern about the achievement of the goals, production of the goal. That is the ideal type of leadership style. They call it team management leadership style. Got it? So basically, what was this? That based on this Ohio State and Michigan University 2 dimensions studies, Mr. Roberts Black and Jane Mountain, they developed this, they call it Managerial Grid, to understand this framework, theoretical framework of the behavior leadership styles. And they identify 5 different styles, which I explained to you. Once again, what they did basically, they tried to understand, they tried to build or plot this both dimension on a graph paper to understand the theoretical concept of this behavior approach of leadership. If we go through again this leadership approach, a leadership style, we can understand three parts of this behavior approach. Number one, the task orientation of this behavior approach. Number two, the relationship orientation of the behavior approach. And number three, the development orientation of the behavior approach. Let me go one by one and try to understand it with you. Number one, task orientation of behavior approach. Goal setting, standard setting, supervision, giving direction is basically the outcome or the behavior part of a leader's style, a leader based on his or her behavior. That if we look at his or her behaviors specific to task side, how he or she is setting the goals, how they are preparing the SOPs or standard which they want to achieve. So all these type of behaviors are more toward task orientation or task oriented. Then let's talk about the relationship orientation. The empathy. And you know what is empathy basically? When you're trying to understand the behavior of other person, they call it putting yourself in other person's shoes, try to understand other person's behavior. In the management science, we call it empathy basically. The trust, the supportive needs, the shared decision making. So these are the behavior aspects which are more toward relationship orientation. Then the development orientation. Whatever they are doing for the innovation, the creativity, the experimentations, the change management, this is toward the development orientations. So this was about the behavior approach or behavior theories. So far we have covered two approaches. Number one, trait approach or trait theory. Let me quickly go back more about these both theories, because this is, to some extent, people say this is the boring part of the subject. When you talk about theories, when you talk about the history, but this is very important, because we have to link those things to understand the real thing. So what happened basically, that when people were shifted toward the humanistic approach, they started understanding or realizing the importance of human being in the achievement of goals in the organizations. And when they realize that this is the most important input or resource any organization can have, once they realized this, they started more and more studying this important resource of any input an organization can have. Then they figure out not every human being is the same. Their behavior are different, their perception is different, their performance is different. And then they figure out there are two obvious different type of people in an organization. One, which have some leadership, a leader type of characteristics. Second, and of course they were few. Then there are more which have the followers type of characteristics. And they started studying it more and more, so that they should be very much confident while picking the people for the right type of job or position, especially the leader position. Again, leadership is not a position, leadership is a process. So in beginning, as I said earlier, people got all these new ideas based on different people's studies, research, like Hawthorne studies, and different theoretical aspect of the management science, or human part. In beginning, they thought there are two types, and in the text, if you can review the text or literature, you will figure out that in beginning, they were giving example of two types of approaches or two theories. Number one, trait theory. Number two, behavior theory. But later on, they started adding up these contingency theories. And yet now, people are also adding up a fourth type of approach or theory. We call it new theories. Today, I tried to focus on two theories. Number one, trait theory. Number two, behavior theory. In the trait theory, the belief was that leaders are born, not made. It started with the original thinking that people are born with some genetic makeup, that these type of people with this particular genetic makeup are going to be the leaders. वो होता था ना कि ये रॉयल फैमिली से लोग हैं तो यही लोग आगे जो है मुल्क के सरबराह बनेंगे. ये मार्शल नेशन है, यही फाइटिंग करने वाली, लड़ाई करने वाली नेशन है, तो इसी में से लोग आगे फाइटर बनेंगे. To some extent, during those studies, they were also able to identify very significant type of characteristics or traits, which are of course very important or essential for a leader to be an effective leader. उसकी भी एक लंबी लिस्ट हमने मुख्तलिफ रेफरेंस के साथ आपके साथ शेयर की. That honesty, उसकी पर्सनल कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स, उसकी पर्सनैलिटी के कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स, उसके सोशल एस्पेक्ट, वो चीजें आइडेंटिफाई की गई कि these are the traits, these are the characteristics which can make a person an effective leader or which can help you to differentiate a leader from the followers. फिर क्यों उन्होंने किया ऐसा? इसलिए कि they should be able to pick people based on those characteristics, those traits for the leadership position, for the leader position. Again, remember, leadership is not a position. I may be while discussion, I may use this leadership thing. So leadership is not a position, it's a process. Remember this thing, basic theoretical concept. लेकिन हम बात कर रहे होते हैं तो वो लीडर को लीडरशिप से मिक्स कर जाते हैं. तो इस ट्रेड थ्योरी जो थी और ट्रेड अप्रोच था लीडरशिप का, ये काफी अर्से तक ये बिलीव रहा और लोग यही समझते रहे कि यस, लीडर्स आर बॉर्न, कोई और लीडर नहीं बन सकता. दीज आर जेनेटिक कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स विच ए पर्सन कैन हैव. ये खुदादाद सलाहियतें हैं. यस, देयर आर फ्यू. लेकिन बाद में फिर एक शिफ्ट आई बेस्ड ऑन डिफरेंट स्टडीज, बिहेवियर थ्योरी और बिहेवियर अप्रोच का कंसेप्ट आया. और मेजर स्टडीज जो थी वो ओहायो स्टेट की एक स्टडी थी, एंड देन अनदर वन वाज मिशिगन यूनिवर्सिटी स्टडीज. The Ohio State study focused on two dimensions of leadership: initiating structure and considerations of the subordinates. And similar study was conducted by University of Michigan. And they focused on two dimensions. They gave it the name to that study, that those two dimensions was, number one, employee-oriented or employee-centered, and number two, production orientation or organization-centered dimensions. और इस बेस पे फिर क्या हुआ कि रॉबर्ट ब्लैक ने और जेन मॉर्टन ने they kind of developed a managerial grid, and they started plotting two things. वो सेम थिंग लाइक वो स्टडी थी ओहायो की और मिशिगन की, कि एक वाई एक्सिस पे उन्होंने कंसर्न ऑफ द लीडर टुवर्ड द फॉलोअर्स, टुवर्ड द पीपल को प्लॉट किया, स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम 1 to 9. 1 was the least and 9 was the maximum. और एक्स एक्सिस में दे प्लॉटेड द ऑर्गेनाइजेशन कंसर्न और प्रोडक्शन ओरिएंटेशन. अगेन इट वॉज फ्रॉम 1 to 9. 1 was the least concern, 9 was the highest concern. और इस ग्रिड मैनेजरियल ग्रिड के बेस पे उन्होंने 5 लीडरशिप स्टाइल आइडेंटिफाई किए. ठीक है. और द बेस्ट वन वाज वेयर दे हैव द मैनेजर और लीडर, दे आर मोर हाईएस्ट लेवल ऑफ कंसर्न अबाउट द पीपल और सबऑर्डिनेट्स एंड हाईएस्ट लेवल ऑफ कंसर्न अबाउट द ऑर्गेनाइजेशन और प्रोडक्शन और द अचीवमेंट ऑफ गोल्स. और उसको उनका नाम दिया टीम मैनेजमेंट स्टाइल ऑफ द लीडरशिप. I'll stop it here. During my next lecture, that will be lecture number 10, I'll again start from here, discussing these approaches or leadership theories. और फिर हम अगली दफा इंशाल्लाह कंटीजेंसी थ्योरी पे फोकस करेंगे. उसके अंदर पाथ गोल अप्रोच या थ्योरी है, क्रिज्मेटिक आगे उसका स्टाइल देखेंगे. आई एग्री विद यू, काइंड ऑफ जो हमारा एक स्टाइल है जिस तरह हम आपस में डिस्कस करते हैं, ये थ्योरेटिकल पार्ट थोड़ा सा बोर लगेगा आपको, बट दैट इज पार्ट ऑफ द होल कोर्स. तो वी नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड दोज थिंग. इसी के बेस पर आगे हम बिल्ड करेंगे और आगे चलेंगे. टेक केयर ऑफ योरसेल्फ. अल्लाह हाफिज. अस्सलाम वालेकुम.